Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our very special virtual trustee luncheon today with our special guest, Eric Silagy, the president and CEO of Florida Power and Light. We're excited to bring you this program and Eric today. As you all know, this is exclusive to our trustee membership. All the folks on this call, you represent the power base. I like to call our trustee membership the power base of our business community, CEOs of our corporations, senior level executives that are able to move the needle on critical issues that our communities face. So I want to thank all the trustees for being on the call today. Welcome you here. Hope everyone is doing well. And we certainly look forward to doing this in person very, very soon. So as I mentioned, we've got a really special guest today, Eric Silagy, and I'm going to read his bio and give Eric a proper introduction because he deserves it. It's a long bio, and I'll do my best. But I want to just add some personal comments in before I get to the official bio. Eric, to you and your team, and Pam, and Don Kay, and Crystal, and of course our very own Sophia Eccleston, I just want to say thank you. FPL always has been, and during this time with this pandemic, has been nothing short of an amazing corporate partner, chamber partner, corporate citizen in supporting us all the way through this. FPL has not missed a beat with all of their support to all the chambers. I speak for our community across the state, and so thank you so very much for that. And thanks for sharing Sophia Eccleston with us. Sophia is, of course, on the Chamber's Board of Directors. She's a great leader for us. And in fact, we will be honoring her as our 2021 Diamond of the Year recipient later this year in September. So we're very, very excited about that as well. So Eric, thanks to you and your team for all that you're doing for the chamber industry and for our state. Very much appreciate that. So Eric has a great program for us. He's going to go through a presentation, and then we're going to have the opportunities making himself available for some questions at the end. And the format that we're here, Zoom, is a webinar format. So if you take the mouse and scroll to the bottom, hover down the bottom, you'll see a Q&A tab down there. So you can put your questions there, and then I will moderate those, and we'll get to as many as we can. Eric's great at answering all the questions, so don't hesitate. So let me now just get to his bio. Again, it's long and impressive. So as has been mentioned, Eric is the president and CEO of Florida Power and Light, which is a subsidiary of NextEra Energy, Inc., which is one of the largest investor-owned utilities in the nation. He was appointed president in December of 2011 and CEO in May of 2014. So he's held all the leadership positions. Eric's worked for NextEra Energy companies for more than a decade. For FPL, he served as Senior Vice President of Regulatory and State Government Affairs and as Chief Development Officer, managing all generation development, including solar, natural gas, and nuclear energy projects. At NextEra, Mr. Silagy served as Vice President and General Manager of the Southern Region and Vice President of Business Development. Prior to joining NextEra, Eric served as Vice President, Mergers, Acquisitions, and Divestitures at Entergy Wholesale Operations, and as Vice President and Managing Director, Southeast Asia for the Wing Group, a subsidiary of Western Resources. He also worked for United States Senator J. Bennett Johnston of Louisiana in several different capacities, including his Chief of Staff. Eric's a member of the Board of Directors of the United States Chamber of Commerce and the Florida Chamber of Commerce, where he served as chairman back in 2013, 2014. And he currently serves as the chairman of the International Business Council. In addition, he's currently serving a 7-year term as a member of the Board of Governors for the State University System of Florida. He also serves on the Energy Security Leadership Council of Securing America's Future Energy, a bipartisan council of business and military leaders supporting a comprehensive long-term policy to reduce U.S. oil dependence and improve energy security. Additionally, Eric is an executive board member of Enterprise Florida, vice chair of the Florida Council 100, and a board member of the Honda Classic, which just executed a very successful tournament a couple weekends ago. Congratulations on that. Eric holds a Bachelor of Arts in Economics from the University of Texas, Austin, a Juris Doctorate from Georgetown University Law, and he's a member of the Maryland and United States Supreme Court bars. That's just some of the things that Eric does, but clearly this is a busy man. We are incredibly fortunate to have Eric with us in our community, in our county, having FPL in our county supporting us like he does. So with that, Eric, again, thank you so much for being here in front of all these leaders and talking today. We're really pleased to have you. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Troy. I appreciate that. We're going to have to get a shorter bio. It sounds like I can't keep a job, for heaven's sakes. But seriously, thanks for the very warm introduction. That's fantastic news about Sophia. I'm not surprised. She's one of our rock stars. And, you know, it's really part of the culture of the company, too, to be engaged in the community and to give back. So I'm really pleased that she's being recognized for that. And look, I very much appreciate the opportunity today to be able to address the trustees and answer questions, and importantly also give you an update as to kind of what we've been up to and some thoughts that I have about actually the state of Florida as well, because, you know, this has been it's been a challenging time for all of us, and I want to take just a moment to say thank you to you, Troy, and to really to the Boca Chamber, because you guys have stayed very focused on making sure that through this tough time, the business community was also focused on and not forgotten, and people were able to get the help that they needed during some extraordinarily challenging times. I mean, you know, I will tell you, look, we had a pandemic plan actually that we had updated about 2 years ago. And even though we had a plan, our plan did not include a global pandemic that would sweep across the world and shut down supply chains. And so this has been a challenge really for all of us. And, you know, you've been a really important partner in making sure that we're successful, you know, as a community and as a state, and that, you know, we're able to keep things going well for everybody, like I said, during some extraordinarily challenging times. So while I've been talking, trying to manipulate this, and, you know, I've become a quasi Zoom expert, but I want to make sure. Can you see that okay, Troy? Does it look good? Okay. All right. Then I'm going to go ahead and start with the presentation. That way I can leave enough time for Q&A for everybody. And again, just taking a moment on COVID-19. I mean, look, this has been unprecedented for all of us to go through. And, you know, the Boca Chamber stepped up. I think Florida actually did a nice job in stepping up. And I'll tell you, we worked really hard as a company to go beyond what we know is our fundamental duty, and that is to keep the lights on and to make sure that we can deliver on the promise. So people can shelter in place and go to school. And, you know, I've explained to employees, if we don't do our job, then how can we ask our medical workers who are on the front line to do theirs when there's no electricity in the hospital? So it is not lost upon us that that's our fundamental duty to serve. But we also have a duty to serve the community. And I'm really proud of what the company has done over the past years, and the employees. You know, through employee contributions and through shareholder contributions, we've put in place over $75 million of aid to customers who really were struggling and on hard times and trying to figure out how to make ends meet. And you know, I just think it's incumbent upon all of us to never forget that you know, we're all part of a bigger community. It's not all about us. It's making sure that those who we serve, and even those who we don't, the state of Florida and America are taken care of as best as possible. We all pull together for that. So again, you know, I want to say thank you for all you've done. And I am optimistic. I'm really optimistic about where Florida is heading. And I'll talk about that. But before I do, I thought I'd take a step back and give you just a quick overview Just to remind folks kind of who we are. I mean, I hope all of you are FPL customers. And for that, I'll also say thank you. I'll also remind you that it is a medically proven fact that you sleep much better when your room is cold. So feel free to turn that AC down at night and know that you're really doing this for your health. You're kind of helping me out in the process as well, and I appreciate that. But Florida Power and Light is part of a bigger company called NextEra Energy. That's actually the publicly traded entity on the New York Stock Exchange. And the two primary businesses are FPL and then NextEra Energy Resources. Both, actually all three, if you want to say, are headquartered right here in Palm Beach County. And we do a lot of different business across the country. As a matter of fact, NextEra Energy Resources is now in 48 of the states. Of course, FPL is in Florida, so that we're doing business now in every state in America except for Alaska. And who knows, maybe we'll figure out something that makes sense there. But it's a business that's really grown tremendously over the years. And it's probably one of the biggest businesses that a lot of people have never actually heard of. Let me give you some examples. So by market cap, we're bigger than a lot of very, very well-known names, bigger than Shell Oil, bigger than Starbucks and American Express. You can see on the slide here, it says bigger than GM. I actually was doing the math the other day. We're bigger than GM, Ford, and Chrysler combined from a market cap perspective. In fact, last year, for a time, we were actually the largest energy company, having surpassed ExxonMobil of any kind in the world. From an electric standpoint, we're larger than the second and third largest combined in the electric space. So it's really been a tremendous growth story over the past 15 years, not just in market cap, but also values for our shareholder. So whether you want to measure us by 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, those of you who know us well know we're a numbers-driven, data-driven organization. So we look at all those. But we've really performed well. I'm proud of the value that we've been able to deliver for shareholders. Again, no matter how you want to look at it, we have far out surpassed the S&P utilities and even the S&P. And you look at over the 15 years, if you've been a shareholder at NextEra Energy, you've more than tripled what you would have earned had you invested in the S&P 500. So it's been a really good growth story, and that's been driven by a variety of things. Doesn't hurt that we're also a large business in Florida, which has been a growing state, but we've also done a lot outside of Florida to grow that. And we've done it really by investing in America, obviously investing in Florida. You can see these numbers here about the level of investment that we've done. Last year alone, we invested over $14 billion in the United States as a corporation. That makes us one of the top 3 or 4 investors in America of any kind, not electric, but of any kind. And in Florida alone, we invested nearly $7 billion last year, and we'll invest more than $7 billion this year. Now, that's really about what do we invest in and what are we doing to be able to make that work for customers? Because it's easy to spend money. What's not easy to do is to spend money smartly so you can actually then reduce costs and give customers a better value proposition. And that's really what our focus is how do we actually deploy capital smartly so we can actually then provide a better value for customers, whether that's better value through cost reductions, better value through enhanced reliability, better value through stronger resiliency, or just meeting the needs of a growing economy. Look, Florida now is a $1.1 trillion economy. That's just Florida. If we are our own country, we'd be the 17th largest country in the world from a GDP standpoint. Matter of fact, last year, interestingly, pre-COVID, Florida went from 1 trillion to 1.1 trillion. So we added $100 billion. That 0.1 is $100 billion in 1 year of GDP growth. So to put that in perspective, that's the equivalent of adding the entire economy of the state of Mississippi in just 1 year. So we're helping Florida grow, but we're also meeting the demands of Florida. And I'm really bullish on the state right now and why I think we're better positioned than anybody else to come out of this global pandemic even stronger. So why is that? Well, structurally, I think we have a lot of advantages, such as our infrastructure. We've been investing in infrastructure in the state for a long time. We have 20 commercial airports, 15 deep water seaports. We have, of course, the Space Coast and our spaceports with a large commercial growing space industry. We have a robust system of highways, over 120,000 miles of highways and 3,000 miles of rail, which when you look at this all interconnected together, means that if you're a manufacturer here in Florida, you can get your goods to your customers fast anywhere, whether it's across the Southeast, across the United States, or even globally. Of course, we are known as the gateway to Latin America, and our numbers really bear that out. We do more trade with Latin America as a state than anybody in the United States by far, and the Caribbean, by the way. And when you look at not just the number of containers that come in, but the number of cargo flights and flights that go back and forth to Latin America. As a matter of fact, out of Miami International alone, there are more nonstop flights to Latin America on a daily basis than all other airports in the United States combined. So, I think our infrastructure is in pretty good shape. We need to continue to invest in it, and we need to continue to high grade and upgrade it. But when you compare it, our physical infrastructure, when you compare it to so many other states who are really kind of falling apart, if you will, we're way ahead of the curve, and we need to leverage that. Now, physical infrastructure is important, but so is intellectual infrastructure. And this is where, again, we really excel. Many people do not know that we have the #1 university system ranked #1 in America. And as a matter of fact, U.S. News and World Report just came out with their latest rankings about 2 weeks ago. And we rank #1 again for the 5th year in a row, graduating nearly 70,000 students a year out of our 12 universities, and really pushing a lot of research and development and innovation, which you can see just from the number of patents that we did in the last full year it's been reported. We had over 400 patents that were issued to different ideas and innovative approaches by the United States government across our university system alone. And without a strong university system, you cannot have a robust and successful economy, in my opinion. I mean, if you look at Texas, you look at California has relied on their university system to carry them for a long time. I think Florida is in a really good position. We can absolutely do more. We can absolutely be better, but we have a very, very strong system that adds 70,000 students to what is already a very strong workforce, so over 10 million strong here in Florida, of immensely talented and diverse people that bring a lot of different experiences and a lot of different talent to the board. And you look at some of the differentiators that we have too, from a standpoint of culturally, this is a very diverse state. From a linguistic standpoint, I mean, languages. So I didn't know this until recently. There's over 128 languages spoken in Florida. Now, of course, we know that English and Spanish dominate, but there are many, many other languages that are spoken natively by people who live in Florida. Portuguese, French actually is the 3rd largest, German. These are all languages that, again, facilitate trade and help us grow. And these are people who are native speakers who have moved to Florida. And so if you want to come here and bring your regional headquarters, your global headquarters, a call center, you can actually connect back with your customers in a home country with people that actually understand the culture, the customs, and can speak the language in a native tongue. And I think that's a real strong competitive advantage that we bring. Now, of course, Florida also brings an advantage because we have a business environment that is that is very strong, pro-business. We have low taxes. We've got a regulatory environment that is pretty stable. It's predictable. I will tell you, as a big investor of capital, that's one of the absolute litmus tests that I look for, is investing in an area where it's predictable and it's stable. And I can have, at least a reasonable view and expectation of a return on the investment, because I can rely on, a strong rule of law, a fair court system, and a regulatory environment that is welcoming. And of course, cost structure makes a big difference. Any of us who run a business, you have to manage your costs in order to stay open. And of course, there's only so many things that we can do as a company, and electric is our big thing, and we're focused on that. And I'm proud of the fact that FPL is 30% lower from an electric rate than the national average, but even Florida as a whole is 12% below the national average, which is impressive. It's impressive, particularly when you look at the fact that we are, as you can see from the map, a very long peninsula surrounded by water on three sides. And so we're effectively kind of an electrical island. Not quite, but it does create challenges. We have saltwater bodies on both sides, on the east and west coast. We have weather patterns that create challenges, and yet Florida is still able to maintain a very resilient and robust system, but also have one that's affordable and frankly very attractive for people to come in. When you compare the electric rates to anywhere up on the East Coast, Midwest even, or definitely the West Coast like California, we are a bargain. And so a lot of companies are looking at this as part of the holistic package that Florida brings when it comes down to the advantages that we have compared to other states. From a company perspective, we're focused on delivering the best value proposition possible. And when I say value proposition, it's not just about low bills. It's about being reliable, and it's about being clean. And I'll touch on a little bit why I think those are also so important. I think the reliability speaks for itself, because I don't think anybody cares if they have affordable power if they're not getting any. But I also think it makes a difference to be clean and to provide customers with not just clean power today, but actually also a path forward of how we're going to do this for generations to come. So look at our generation portfolio today, and it looks very different than where we were just 15, 20 years ago. Today, we rely a lot on natural gas. We rely a lot on our 4 nuclear reactors that we have here in the state. And we are now building more solar than anybody in America by far, and doing it importantly from an economic standpoint. And that is translated, excuse me, that's translated to a much cleaner profile for the environment. By switching from oil and coal to natural gas and solar, we have now significantly reduced our emissions profile compared to not just folks here in Florida, but to the entire country. And we're 24% cleaner than the national average, and we're on track to actually being 65% less in emissions than we were just 15 years ago. We were already one of the lower ones from a standpoint of emissions output. And let me take just a second to give you a little insight, I guess you'd say, into my philosophy on why it's also important to be clean. It's not because it's politically now popular, which it is. We don't get compensated for being cleaner. There's no, clean tax credit or renewable portfolio standard that we have to meet. But look, this is the right thing to do on a lot of levels. First off, I'm the beneficiary, if you will, of 2 parents who really came from nothing and worked their whole lives to give their children opportunities that they never had. They never even dreamed they could have. And I'm just a big believer that we all have a responsibility, a duty, if you will, to try to actually provide the next generation with those opportunities that we haven't had. At the very least, we have a responsibility to not leave them a mess to clean up. So that's my first philosophical approach to it. But the other thing is, I just think this is smart and good business, particularly in a state like Florida. 1 in 8 jobs in Florida is tied to tourism. 1 in 8. Before COVID hit, we had 127 million people visit Florida in 1 year. More people visited Orlando. 64 million people visited Orlando, which is more than visited the entire state of California in 2019. Look, most people they save all year long to take that vacation. You know, a family of four to go on vacation, it takes a lot of money, and they have to save all year, and they got to save up their vacation time. And I just believe that if somebody has worked as hard as they have to figure out how to take a nice vacation, and they're on final approach in Orlando International Airport or Miami or West Palm or Fort Lauderdale or Tampa, or pick your spot, and they penetrate a smog bank, or they go out on the beach and they get tar all over their feet, or swim in the water and it's dirty, they're not coming back. They're going to be one and done. And when that happens, we're in trouble. When that happens, we all start paying a state income tax, and we stop attracting retirees who have worked their entire lives somewhere else, so they have the ability to move to someplace where it is beautiful and the air is clean, and they can actually enjoy life. And they're not going to pick Florida if it ends up being a place that you can't breathe the air and you can't drink the water, or you can't swim or be on the beaches and enjoy it. So I think being clean is not only the right thing to do, but I think it's also the smart thing to do from a business perspective. Now, reliability I talked about, and look, I am very proud of the fact that for 5 of the last 6 years, we have been ranked the most reliable utility in America. Am I satisfied with where we are? The answer is no, absolutely not. I'm proud of the team because we've embraced new technologies. We've really challenged our own thinking about this. We've done things that no other utility have done. We've piloted technology and then deployed it across the board, which has made a huge difference. All of you have smart meters as an example. That seems like a no-brainer now, but I'll tell you, a decade ago, there were a lot of people who fought mightily to keep that from happening. We've deployed smart grid devices all over the grid now. We have hundreds of thousands of devices that monitor the grid in real time and actually talk to us about what's going on. We're seeing things that we never saw before. And because of that, we're also able to start predicting things that we never understood was actually going on. We receive now billions and billions of data points a day in our system. And we're taking that data and we're now translating that into ways to actually improve reliability by not just being smarter in how we react to a problem, but more importantly, on actually predicting outages before they occur. And of course, I talked about affordable. And look, you got to be able to afford this. I'm a big believer that it's our obligation to do everything we can to make sure that bills are as low as possible. I also think, by the way, it's good business. The reason being is that people have more money in their pockets. Quite frankly, they spend more money in the economy, and that's how the economy grows. And ultimately, that's how FPL grows. I'm really proud of the fact that over the last 15 years, our bills are actually down 10%. And I ask you, what can you go in the store today and buy that's actually 10% cheaper than it was back in 2006? I mean, I wish I could go back and buy a car in 2006 prices, even a house, especially now, the way they're going up. Flat screen TVs, I'll give you, those are a little cheaper today than they were in 2006. But most things have really gone up. And look, FPL is subject to inflation like everybody else, right? We have 9,000 employees at FPL. Our medical costs have not gone down since 2006. I wish they had. We're working hard to do it, but they haven't gone down. And everything else that we have to buy, whether it's copper or aluminum or trucks or anything else, they've gone up in price. Yet our bills have gone down. They've gone down. Every single year that we've been investing in our system, been able to take costs out. And that's how we really do this, because it's counterintuitive. People say, well, wait a minute, how do you invest money in the system and then actually have bills go down? Well, you do it by taking costs out. So this is a very busy chart, and I'll apologize for that, but I think it's important to understand, again, we're a data-driven company. So this is a scale-adjusted, chart of what people across the country, utilities, spend in their operations and maintenance costs for delivering electricity to homeowners and commercial and industrial customers. And as you can see, it's a pretty diverse spread. I benchmark us actually every year we get this data, and every month we do our own internal benchmarking, but I benchmark us against every company in the United States, not just in Florida. And what you'll see here is that on average, that's that orange line. There's a lot of names that you probably would know, but for us, we aren't satisfied with being average. I'm not even satisfied with actually being top quartile. We've actually driven costs out of the company now to the point where we are the lowest spender of money. We are the most productive, is really the way to look at it, utility in the United States. And by the way, not satisfied. We've actually lowered that number for the last 3 years in a row, every single year. Now, what does that really mean? Well, what it means for you is this. We would have actually spent $2.6 billion more every year in O&M if we were average. The difference between us being best in class, if you will, versus average, which, you know, I could probably get away with going to Tallahassee every 3, 4, 5 years whenever we have a rate case and being on the stand under oath and saying, commissioners, I'm proud to tell you that we're doing great. We're right in the middle of the pack, and we're actually average with the utilities in the United States. But if I were doing that, you'd be paying over 20% more on your bill every month. So take whatever you're paying to us every month and increase it by at least 20%. And for nothing, by the way, I wouldn't be giving you a better product. I wouldn't be delivering you a shinier electron. You'd be getting the exact same thing. You'd probably be getting actually worse service, because honestly, we would be culturally, I think, mediocre. And so this is how we actually end up doing it. Now, part of this is because we've invested in technology and we've leveraged that technology to take costs out of the business. It doesn't do any good to go out and buy a piece of technology and have that new fangled whiz bang, but then not change the way you do business. And so that's what we've really been relentlessly focused on, whether it's on the grid or whether it's in power generation and modernizing our fleet, which we've done across our entire generation fleet. We've modernized it from start to finish. And let me show you what I mean when I say modernizing one of our plants. Now, I will tell you, for those of you who might have been a little boy like me and love to kind of blow things up with firecrackers, that's about as much fun as you can legally have with dynamite. Taking down those old plants has been something now we have been working on for almost 2 decades, and replacing them with a plant like what you see on the screen here, which is called a combined cycle natural gas plant. This one happens to be down at Port Everglades. And, you know, this is an example of how you take old technology, which, by the way, when those plants were built in the 1960s, they were state of the art and they served us really well for 50 years or so. But it was clear to us that we could do much better by deploying modern technology that was also innovative, frankly, pushing the manufacturers to be even better and figuring out ways where we could reduce our fuel consumption, because that's one of the biggest costs we have, is buying fuel to convert into electricity. The other thing it's done is it's helped us really be a much cleaner utility, because burning oil creates a lot more emissions than burning clean natural gas. And in the process, we also saved customers a lot of money. So how much? So let me take a step back and take you back to 2001, when we just started this process. In 2001, FPL burned more oil than any utility in America to generate electricity. In that year, we actually purchased 40 million barrels of oil. By the way, all that oil comes from overseas. And if we're going to be really honest about it, it's coming from parts of the world that maybe don't really support America, or even worse. And I used to do a lot of work in the Middle East. They fund people who hate us. And that year, we probably spent about $4 billion in oil money. We started this march to modernize our fleet and to get off foreign oil and to switch to domestically produced natural gas. This is not a sprint. This is a march that takes time. We have to get permission to do all these plants. Actually, we were opposed on every one of these plants. We weren't ordered to do it, weren't asked to do it, we were actually opposed. People said, you know, the economy is doing great, 2003, 2004, right? Don't need to change anything, the plants are paid for. Then the economy is kind of not doing so well. Now's not the right time. Then the economy is in the tank. Now's definitely not the right time. By the way, when the economy is actually in the tank is the best time to build a power plant. That was Cape Canaveral that we built and finished it in 2009. That plant came in 100 million under budget and early. The employees that were working on that in the construction industry were thrilled to have a job. In the process of replacing these, we've actually now reduced our oil consumption. This says down to less than 1 million barrels. It's actually a couple 100,000 of diesel. And we do that because we're required to burn it to prove that we can burn it in case we have to for an emergency. On our own, without being ordered, we've reduced our oil consumption by 99% by modernizing our fleet. And in the process, we reduced the greenhouse gas emissions, SOx and NOx and particulate matter by 99, 98, and 97% respectively. CO2 emissions down over 52%. And oh, by the way, in the process, we saved customers $11 billion. That's money we simply did not spend to buy fuel that we just didn't need. That's not a calculation, by the way, based on the difference in price between oil and gas and the fact that natural gas is, forget about all that. This is simply a function of taking a plant that was built in the 60s. Think about it this way. I'm a car lover. I'm kind of a gearhead. 1962 Cadillac, big car, beautiful fins, very big engine, not the most fuel efficient machine. We actually, I would hope you wouldn't blow it up. We blow our plants up, you park it, and you replace it with a Ford Fusion hybrid. That's what we've done. And that difference in miles per gallon, if you will, we call it heat rate in our business, but in miles per gallon fuel efficiency, we were able to not purchase $11 billion worth of oil. And by the way, that's $11 billion that stayed in Florida's economy, $11 billion that stayed in customers' pockets, and $11 billion that in all likelihood went out there into Florida's economy and helped grow it. Now, it hasn't just been about getting rid of oil. I'm really proud of the fact that at the end of this year, on January 1 of 2021, we shut down our last coal plant in Florida. Not just at FPL, but even the utility that we purchased up in the Panhandle called Gulf Power, which had had an operating coal plant in its fleet for 75 years, gone, shut them down. And not just because environmentally it's the right thing to do, which it is, but also because economically it's the smart thing to do. We shut down our coal plants, and in the process, we saved our customers several hundred, almost $200 million in fuel and other expenses that we would have incurred, but for the fact that we were running coal. Now, what are we replacing that coal with? Well, we're really focused on solar.
Turning to the sun in the Sunshine State.
Florida Power and Light is making a bold prediction for its future.
Florida Power and Light stepping up its game.
Florida Power and Light wants to make the Sunshine State the solar power capital of the country.
The utility is planning to install enough solar panels in Florida to wrap around the earth 1.5 times. That's a goal of 30 million panels by the year 2030.
Now, hopefully you heard those, at least some of those stories and those headlines. You can see on the screen what we're actually doing. That's not an artist rendering. That's actually one of the 4 plants. We added one actually yesterday into operations. And I've got 7 more now plants that we just started, 9 that are in active construction. We are well ahead of our goal to actually have 30 million panels installed by 2030, which is 10,000 megawatts, the largest solar build of any utility in the United States. And why are we doing it? Well, yes, it's great for the environment. It produces no emissions, uses no water, by the way, but also it's economic. And I will tell you this again, right now, the scale is making it a headline, but we've been actually working on solar since 1984. That was our very first solar plant. We built it in Miami. It was tiny because it was really expensive. But since then, we've learned the cost, the benefits, the pros, the cons. By the way, solar is not a silver bullet. It's not the great savior of all of our energy needs. Doesn't really work well at night. So, we're still working on how do you help fix that? And one of the things that we're working on with that is battery technology. So we actually now have under construction the world's largest energy storage center that's next to a solar facility that we already own and operate in Manatee County. This is not a small facility. This is 40 acres of energy storage. It is the equivalent of 100 million iPhones. Or if you want to put it in a different perspective, it's enough to fill up the stadium in Miami, right? 30 times. It's a lot. And it's one of the ways that we're looking at technology and marrying it with additional technology, so solar and batteries, so we can actually make sure that we can reliably and affordably provide power to folks, even when the sun is low on the horizon or below the horizon. In the wintertime, it gets dark early, 5:30 or so, and people are just starting to come home and turn their lights on, turn the stove on, use hot water, all those use electricity. We need to have additional supplies when the panels are no longer producing electricity. Even in the summertime, when the sun becomes low on the horizon and the panels aren't as efficiently producing electricity, we need to be able to boost that because it's still warm and people are using their air conditioners, and we need to be able to meet the needs of customers around the clock. So there's a lot of other areas that we're focused on besides generation, but doing all of these things allow us to actually modernize our fleet and look at ways that we can also then accelerate the retirement of assets that, again, may have served us well, did serve us well for many decades, but are no longer really the cutting edge of technology. And in the process, clean up our emissions profile even further and save customers money. Now, we're also investing in the grid. I talked about this a little bit earlier. This is a picture of some devices that we did not invent, by the way, but we made a lot better by working with the manufacturer, so much so that we have them now throughout our entire system. And these are devices that now are talking to each other and talking to us in real time. And just like on a battlefield, you need to have situational awareness and understand what's going on. Remember, electricity travels at the speed of light. Blink your eye, an electron can travel around the world 7 times. That's how fast things move on the grid. So many things we actually need that information to come in real time and understand it. And the smart grid technology is giving us the opportunity to now actually be predictive in what we do rather than just reactive. We're taking billions and billions of bits of data that come in every day in a control room like this. This is our control room that runs our transmission grid for the entire state of Florida. What this does is now gives us the opportunity, using algorithms that our engineers have developed and patented, I'm proud to say, we're now actually predicting outages hours and sometimes days or over a week in advance of them happening, which is a little freaky for some people, by the way. We've actually knocked on people's doors and said, Mr. Smith, I'm here to tell you that while you don't have a problem now, we're predicting that you're going to have a problem in the next 24 to 48 hours. And, when we first started doing that, it didn't go real well. People were like, well, how do you know what's going on in my house? So I actually had to work on training for people because the first person who said it said, I don't know. Corporate called and said that was going to happen. Well, that just sent our customer into orbit. So we had to explain, we don't know what's going on in the house, but we do know there's a problem based on the smart meter data that's coming in. And here's what we think is probably happening because we've seen it before. Now we're predicting it in the future. And that means that not only do customers have a better experience because they don't lose power, but we're also able to save lots of money because we're not now rolling trucks to try to find a problem after it's occurred, but we're actually fixing things before they break. It's no different than how you operate your car. If you run it until it fails, it's going to be a much higher bill than if you actually do predictive and preventative type of maintenance on your vehicle. That's what we're doing on just a much bigger scale. And we're using a lot of different technology to get there. This is actually a real helmet. This is not some kind of artist rendering that we use, that our drone pilots use when they're flying our drones, which we have now a fleet of close to 100 drones that fly the lines and can see things that frankly we just couldn't see because of either our vantage point or because we don't have infrared eyes like the drones do. And then we're also using technology like this guy here. This is Spot, a Boston Scientific robot that we actually teamed with them on. And we're able to actually send this robot into places where it's very dangerous for humans, and also autonomously where they can do things like patrolling or looking for areas, or when there's a problem at 2 a.m. In a substation. Spot will come off of his charger, walk over, put eyes on it, and we can see real time what's going on. And now I'm dispatching the right crew with the right equipment the first time, rather than trying to figure out what's going along, what's happening while we just go along on the way. So a lot of different areas like that. We're also very focused on undergrounding more and more of our lines. We now have 85,000 miles of distribution line in our system here in Florida. About 40% is underground, and we have now the opportunity to do even more because of legislation that was passed a few years ago. And we have a program that, again, this is not a sprint, this is a march, but over the next several decades, we are going to work to put everybody's lines that are currently running through the back or the front of your yards underground. Much better from a storm perspective during hurricanes, but also during day-to-day operations. Look, Florida has thunderstorms with 60-mile-an-hour winds every day during the summer. This makes a big difference and really helps on a long-term perspective. By the way, also means I don't have to go out and trim the trees in your backyard as often, or your front yard. And that may not seem like a big deal, but last year I spent $71 million just trimming trees. So that's a cost that we can take out of the system, and we can now put back in other ways to help reduce bills and make it even more affordable and reliable. So to do all that, we have to continue investing. And that's one of the reasons that we have filed a rate case. We did so a few weeks ago in front of a commission. It's been 5 years since we've had a base rate adjustment. The settlement agreement that we are operating under will expire in December. So we actually have to go in front of the commission. This is how prices are set, right? I'm not like Publix, where we can go in and change the price of a loaf of bread by walking down the aisle and just changing it. We have to go before the Public Service Commission. We go through what's effectively a trial. It's a quasi-judicial proceeding. We explain exactly what is driving our cost to serve, and we ask them for permission to recover that. Infrastructure requires you to continue to invest. If you do it and you do it smartly, I think we've demonstrated now repeatedly, we can actually keep costs low and improve reliability from what's already the best in the country, and continue to drive other benefits like an emissions profile that's second to none. So again, I'll wrap it up by saying this. I'm bullish on Florida. We are a rapidly growing state, but we have challenges. We are on the forefront of climate change, like it or not. Just geographically, the things that we love also create a lot of challenges. I am committed to making sure that FPL is a leader in helping Florida be successful. And again, it's not just because it makes me feel good to do it. It really is about planning and doing the right thing for future generations. I mean, if I'm being honest, the vast majority of things we've done now, I mean, they're set. This is really about what are we going to do to make sure Florida is successful 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now. And those aren't always easy conversations to have, particularly if you're dealing with elected officials who have an investment horizon, if you will, of maybe 2 or 4 years. But I think it's a conversation that's really worth having. And I'll tell you, I think generally now it's been more widely accepted. But your engagement and your leadership on this is really important, because you are important voices in the community. And we are just but one voice. But we really want to work with you and work together to find the best solutions. We did not corner the market on intelligence at FPL. We are not perfect. And so we're always trying to learn and figure out how can we be better. And so having that dialogue with all of you really helps us do that and be more successful for the long term. So thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. Troy, I'm going to stop sharing this now so we can go to Q&A.
All right, Eric. Wow. I mean, I think I know a lot about FPL, but then I get to listen to you for a while, and I'm just so proud to hear about everything you're doing across the board. I think I could listen to you all afternoon and learn more about what you're doing.
I appreciate you saying that, Troy. I'm going to have you call my wife and tell her that.
Happy to do it. But that was amazing. I mean, just from, you start off with the market cap and giving people the perspective about this organization and just how you continue to be more efficient and reducing customers' bills. I mean, listen, the small businesses, which you support so much across the state and the country. I mean, these things matter. And so what you're doing matters to everybody, the business, the consumer. And, I love your bullishness on getting better. I love that you're not satisfied with the top quartile. This is good. We love to hear that from our leader leading this company. So we appreciate that as well.
Well, look, Troy, I'll tell you again, I think Florida is so well positioned. If we are thoughtful and smart as a business community, we can really make a difference in setting up Florida for future generations to have opportunities that even we didn't have. And it's kind of hard to imagine because it's almost been an embarrassment of riches for the last 15 years if you lived here in Florida, right? I mean, we've had our hiccups, granted, it's been tough at different times, but holy cow, we are so structurally advantaged when you compare us to other states who are economically flailing. And they don't have the ability to actually lower their cost structure because they have either, whether it's unions or laws in place or constitutional amendments that now require them to spend money. They're losing revenue because people are leaving, so they're paying less taxes, and yet their cost structure remains high. So to offset that, they simply raise taxes or raise fees, which drives out more people. It's a little bit of an economic death spiral. Yep. We're going to have millions. The estimate is 6 million in the next, less than a decade, right, move to Florida. I think that might be light, actually. Yeah. We need to be smart and thoughtful about how we manage that growth. And if we are, we will be second to none. Texas will be in our contrails trying to figure out how to catch up.
Yeah, I agree. And Eric, you're just such a big part of that overall strategy to keep us, going in that right direction. So thanks. So we've got some really good questions.
Fire away.
You've definitely got people going, and we'll try to be mindful of your time as well. I'm going to start off with the first one because I'm not ever worried about this happening in our state. And of course, I'll just reference the little an energy crisis in Texas that just happened. And I'm sure this is one you've gotten before, but we look at that from afar, and we know it's not going to happen here, but. Tell us a little bit about that, and why wouldn't it happen other than you're here to make sure it doesn't?
Well, and I appreciate the vote of confidence. I used to run our Texas business, and of course, as you said, I'm a Longhorn and married a 5th generation Texan, and my son was born there, so we have a lot of ties to Texas, right? And love Texas on a lot of levels. But structurally speaking, from an energy perspective, particularly electrically, I think Texas made some missteps along the way, and they did it. Frankly, eyes wide open because they were warned on a number of these things. So one of the things that Texas did is they disconnected themselves electrically from all the states around them. And they did that because for any of your trustees who are constitutional lawyers, you remember the Commerce Clause. And so if there's interties on state trade, between states on trade, then federal jurisdiction is there. By disconnecting electrically, they have successfully argued that the federal government doesn't have jurisdiction because they didn't want the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission of Washington telling them what to do. And so they were successful in being basically, look, as my wife, again, 5th generation Texan, is proud to, reminds me, Texans are proud because they were their own country, the only state to be their own country. And they don't like anybody telling them what to do. The downside to that is they're not connected to everybody else. And so when you need help, there was no way to reach across state lines and get a helping hand. That's one thing. Secondly, they created a market structure where basically power is priced on a real-time basis on whoever's the lowest cost provider. Well, if you're always going for the lowest cost, This is no different than if you always take the lowest bid for, I don't care if it's your landscaper or whatever, you're not necessarily going to get the highest quality. Okay. And so what happens is people who have power generation, which by the way, we own a bunch of wind turbines there. What you end up doing is you have to run as basically as much of a shoestring budget as you can, because you're bidding in the lowest price every day, hoping that when there's an anomaly from weather or something else in the market happens, like a big plant breaks down and now there's a need to fill that, you make a lot of money in a couple of hours or a day that make up for the rest of the year when you're running on a margin. What does that mean? People aren't maintaining their plants to the same level. They're not actually investing in having backup fuel on site. So their gas plants don't have backup diesel like I do. They don't have as many plants on backup because there's no way to compensate somebody for being there in reserve. It's actually called a reserve margin. We run at a 20% reserve margin in Florida. They run right now, they say at about 7%. There's days when it's probably about 3%. Look, they almost blacked out last summer. So it's not just about winter. They did black out in 2011 on a much smaller scale. As a matter of fact, we ran an ad in the Austin American-Statesman, Next Era, along with 3 other companies. It showed America at night from orbit, right? Satellite image, all lit up. Texas was all blacked out. And we actually ran the ad and said, if you don't change your market design, this is what's going to happen. We ran that ad in January of 2014. This was predictable. Wow. Okay. Now, I'm not going to tell you that people across the country wouldn't have difficulties if they had significant change in their weather pattern for an extended period of time. We shouldn't kid ourselves either. You know, the lowest temperature in Miami was recorded in 1917. It was 27 degrees. Texas had 4 days in a row of temperatures that averaged 9 to 10 degrees below their lowest ever. If we had 19 degrees in Miami for 3 or 4 days, we're going to have difficulties and challenges too, because I'm not allowed to build new transmission lines as an example, right? Because you can't get them permitted. And getting a new power plant actually permitted in places, you know, like Broward County or Dade County. I mean, at Palm Beach County, it's hard, if not impossible. So we're managing all of that in the growth. And I will tell you this, you know, structurally, we're much better off than Texas, but I also don't take any of this for granted. I have a very robust, smart team of people right now looking at everything that happened in Texas, and we're questioning ourselves and saying, what can we do better? And so we're going back and looking at winterizing our own plants down in Miami, which, holy cow, you never even think about doing, but we've done it to a certain extent, but we're actually now questioning ourselves and saying, wow, you know, they actually had a pump freeze at a nuclear plant on Matagorda Bay, which is in far South Texas. What would happen at Turkey Point if weather got that cold? And so we're going to address it, because just like hurricanes, you learn from every storm, right? Because everyone is different, and you can't drink your own Kool-Aid. Hubris will end up punishing you. And I think that's one of the big things that Texas learned is, you know, hubris popped them this time. I'm not going to allow that to happen to us, although I deeply respect Mother Nature, because boy, she will humble you, and you just can't take it for granted.
You got that right. Thank you for answering that. I appreciate it. All right, let's get to some of these other ones. So we've got a question about Puerto Rico. Given our proximity, did or how did FPL get involved with the rebuilding of Puerto Rico's infrastructure?
Yeah, we got involved in a very big way. We sent over almost 1,000 people. I had crews there for over 6 months. You know, look, these are American citizens, and having American citizens without power for months and months is just, you know, that's unacceptable to me. We are not a third world country, and unfortunately, Puerto Rico's grid was effectively kind of built as a third world country and maintained that way. So we offered to help. We actually sent over a lot of people. We also sent a lot of management teams over, and we ended up being tasked with figuring out the strategy for breaking the whole issue down and how to get the lights back on. Now, FPL customers, the one thing I insisted on was that FPL customers were not going to pay for that. So the federal government paid for it. So that means we all paid for it, if you will, because of taxes. And I was frustrated, if I'm going to be really honest here. You it took almost 2 years to get fully reimbursed. And, for those who run a business, you understand time value of money, and I didn't get interest. So, we did pay for that, but it's the right thing to do. But, it's such a good example of, if you do not invest in your infrastructure and you do not anticipate, and also, by the way, train and drill for these type of events, then you will, at some point, you will end up really misstepping. And what that really means is people not only suffer, people die. And that's just not acceptable to me. So, we were very much engaged. I'm proud of the team. Like I said, we had some people that were there for more than 6 months. We were injury free too, by the way, which I'm very proud of. This is a business that, if you're not careful, will kill you. And when you're working 16-hour days in unfamiliar territory and terrain and hostile environment, it doesn't take much to misstep. So I was proud that the team stayed kind of religiously focused, if you will, on safety. But we got the lights back on for, hundreds of thousands of people in Puerto Rico, and kind of proud of that. And, Florida did a great job too, by the way. I gotta give credit to then Governor Rick Scott. He was very engaged. We engaged the Corps of Engineers, FEMA, and other utilities sent over crews as well. This was a national effort. It wasn't just Florida Power and Light. And it's awfully nice to see people come together as they should. Storms bring out the very best and the very worst of people. There was a lot of really good that came out of that.
Yeah, it was great work in Puerto Rico. Thank you. Eric, it's 2 minutes after 1, and I've got a host of questions, and I want to be respectful of your time.
I'm okay for a few minutes if you
Okay
are, but
for
I
a
leave
few
it
more
to you
minutes?
and your members. I get it. Everybody's busy. So
We'll try
it's whatever you want to do.
rapid fire if we can, but there's some good ones here.
Sure.
By the way, a million compliments on you and your company and what you're doing and how you're doing it. So I just need to say
Thank
that.
you.
Okay, so next one, any ideas about using water waves to create energy?
Yeah, so the Gulf Stream is one that's brought up often, and we've been actually looking at this for more than 2 decades. We've actually had a partnership with FAU, also with the Department of Energy, Department of Defense, Department of Interior. Oh my gosh, the list is long of federal bureaucracies involved on this. I love the idea of having a 24-hour-a-day, renewable resource, if you will. And it makes a lot of sense in a lab. It doesn't make any sense from a practical standpoint today, unfortunately. One of the things is, and you can appreciate this, anybody who's had, a house or a condo or an apartment on the beach, how corrosive salt in the air is. Think about putting a sophisticated piece of equipment, a water turbine underwater in the salt down several hundred feet. Every time it breaks, I've either got to send down divers or I've got to bring it up using big barges to repair it. That's expensive. The equipment itself is expensive. Honestly, they haven't been able to actually come up with a design that doesn't end up getting shredded by just the power of the Gulf Stream when you get to that big scale. The GE commercial that many of us saw of these very cool looking underwater turbines all looks great until you start figuring out that, technically speaking, it's hard to operate. It's really expensive. It's going to end up processing sea turtles and fish and possibly scuba divers. The recreational fishermen can't stand the thought of it. The commercial fishermen hate it. And the Department of Defense actually also has a real problem with putting anything down that interferes with our sonar buoy network that actually protects the coastline. So can all those things be figured out? Probably. I don't know about the divers and fishermen because there's people that are emotional about it. But oh, by the way, to get the power back on shore, I got to drop cables on the ocean floor and then run them across the reef. So I'm going to come back to all of y'all and ask for your help on getting the permits to either dynamite the reef or lay the cables over the top of them or horizontally drill underneath them, because that'll be fun. I just don't think it's possible. And the other question we have to ask ourselves is it really affordable? And the answer is, it's not compared to other alternatives. So I much prefer what we're working on right now as a pilot on green hydrogen. That's actually taking water, splitting the hydrogen molecule off of the oxygen molecule, but which is well proven technology using an electrolyzer. The difference is we're going to be powering that electrolyzer with solar energy. So zero emissions, energy from the sun, turning it into hydrogen, burning it into existing power plants that used to burn a fossil fuel, now burn zero emissions hydrogen. That to me is a win-win. If we can do it on a commercial scale, game changer.
Wow, that's awesome. We'll keep.
And that's part of the rate case. We're actually filing for permission to ask to do that up at Okeechobee County. So this isn't pie in the sky. We're actually have a design ready to go. We'd start construction on it right away.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah, that is cool. All right, next one's about electric vehicles. Thoughts
Yeah.
about FPL turning their fleets over to EVs?
So we're in the process of changing over our fleet, and we have actually for a number of years. We've worked with the manufacturers of actually a lot of different vehicles to convert existing vehicles over. So we've actually been running hybrid bucket trucks for quite some time, and we were the first utility to actually run fully electric bucket trucks. They have their challenges, and you have to be really smart about it. You put 400 pounds of batteries on a truck with a gasoline engine, or a diesel engine, you're burning more fuel to carry around weight. So you have to kind of figure out how to balance all these. But look, electric vehicles are here to stay. The battery cost is the number one driver, and that is coming down precipitously. The reason we're building the world's largest battery storage facility is because battery costs have come down so much because of the automobile industry, not because of us. And so I think as that continues to develop and batteries get better, go from current lithium ion to solid state batteries, you'll get greater range, greater ability to charge faster and discharge slower. Battery technology, storage capacity, electric vehicles, here to stay. We're all in. We're building actually fast charging stations across the state right now, working with the DeSantis administration, Department of Transportation to make that happen. And I'm excited about it. If we don't address transportation, we're kidding ourselves about getting to a zero emissions economy. It's just baloney. I don't care what the utility industry does, because the transportation sector produces more emissions than the utility industry. So we have to do this together and not demonize one technology over another, but we have to also do it smartly. So we actually select technology that's based on scientific data and objectively makes sense. That's also affordable, not pie in the sky stuff that works great in the lab, but falls apart when you put it in the real world.
Yeah. Great. Someone did have a question about batteries, so you already answered it. So we appreciate that. Question here.
By the way, on batteries, Troy, the one thing that we all have to be thoughtful about is, what are we going to do after 10 years when the batteries need to be replaced? Right? This goes to my point earlier. I don't want to leave my 19-year-old with a mess to clean up because we now have 100 billion batteries that need to be disposed of, and sticking them in a landfill is not the answer. So we need to be looking at that today rather than waiting until it's a crisis.
Yep. Good. All right. Question about the pros and cons of moving from natural gas to solar power generation in the years to come.
So, again, this is one of those, like a good financial portfolio, you need to have some diversity. And solar is our fastest growing form of generation. Very committed to it because it's also economic. When I have a solar facility, I don't buy any fuel. When I have a solar facility, I don't pay for any water. I'm not either buying it or drilling wells and taking it out of the aquifer. And I'm not producing any emissions, which I don't get any compensation for, but it's the right thing to do. And so I think solar will play a very important, especially coupled with storage, battery storage, is going to play a very important role going forward for the entire industry. It is not a silver bullet, but it is absolutely part of a smart portfolio of assets that help you deliver power 24/7 cleanly and affordably.
Cool. All right. We're getting along. I'm going to end on this one because it's
Okay.
The person who asked it says it was a crazy question, but I think
It's okay. I love crazy questions. I may not know the answer.
So is FPL working with NASA to create a power grid on Mars?
Yes. No, we're not.
Okay.
We're not. So here's what I'll tell you about that. I mean, look, I'm a frustrated pilot. My dad taught me to fly. I love space and everything about it. And I would love if NASA asked us for some ideas. But, look, it's interesting. Culturally, I don't even think of us as a utility. We're a technology company that delivers power. So that's the kind of challenge that theoretically I'd love to have. But we're also not a white lab coat R&D. right? You rely on us, all of you, every day to make sure that, number one, we serve the customers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We keep the lights on, because without that, the economy shuts down and people suffer. So that's our number one responsibility. I've got to also do it affordably, and I have to do it reliably. I'm willing to push the bounds of technology, but up to a point, right? I'm not going to bet customers' money or their reliability on stuff out in Mars, as an example. I like being on the cutting edge of technology, not the bleeding edge of technology. Mars, fascinating, but clearly bleeding edge. Someday, maybe, but for now, we're focused on Florida and the United States, and making sure that the state is positioned better than any other state to be successful, and that America is positioned better than any country in the world for the long term.
Well, thanks to you and FPL, Eric, we are positioned certainly in Florida and to a large extent the country as well. I cannot thank you enough for spending this time and extra time with us, Eric. This is the quickest hour and 10 minutes of the year, and the best perhaps, but really appreciate what you've done here. Again, I want to thank you and the team for all that you do for our chamber, for the chamber industry, for the communities that you serve. We can't thank you enough and appreciate it. We look forward to celebrating Sophia in September. It's going to be here before we know it. So maybe we'll get to see you then.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great. And Troy, I want to thank you for the opportunity. I really do. I thank all the Board of Trustees and everybody at the Chamber for your support. Look, I'm blessed to be part of an amazing team of people at FPL and part of an amazing community. Y'all have been very supportive of the company and obviously of the community and of the state. And for that, I thank you as well. It's a great partnership, and I look forward to working together in the future.
Yeah, you bet. Us too. And for the trustees that are with us, we've got a couple things coming up. It's going to be hard to top this one today, obviously. But next month on April 22nd, we're going to have an in-person event for our trustees. It's going to be an after hours at one of our new members, Diamonds Direct. So, you know, if you want to bring your spouse and have them buy you a new diamond, that's a thought coming up. And then in May, we're going to hear from Michael Stone, who works with the Palm Beach International Equestrian Center as well, and talk about that economy and what that does for Palm Beach County. So again, I want to thank everybody for joining today. Stay safe. Try to do everything you can to participate and keep this economy moving, support our great state, and of course, support the technology company that brings you power, and that is FPL. So Eric, thanks so much.
Thanks,
Take
Troy.
care. We hope to see you soon.
Thanks. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.